My name is Mr. Avid. Welcome to this video of a Model Avid tutorial. Let's go into an Avid classroom and see what the tutorial is all about. First, it is important to remember that before the Avid tutorial, there are 3 important steps. These are the first 3 steps in the 10-step tutorial process. The first step is that students take notes in their academic classes. Then, they go home and create a tutorial request form, or TRF, based on a specific point of confusion. Then, for step 3, students turn their TRF into the teacher or tutor upon entering the Avid classroom. Once the TRF is turned in, it is checked and sorted by subject area. Moving along the 10-step Avid tutorial process, steps 4 through 7 cover what happens during the Avid tutorial session. This is the process we will see in just a short moment. In step 4, students are divided into tutorial groups at a ratio of 1:7. Moving on to step 5, the first student presenter begins the tutorial by giving a 30-second speech about her point of confusion. It is here that tutors and group members ask questions to guide the student presenter through the critical thinking process. All the while, tutorial members are taking notes. During step 6, group members and the tutor checks to make sure the student presenter has understood her point of confusion. This should happen before moving on to the next student presenter and repeating the process. It should also be mentioned that there are 3 steps in the tutorial process that follow the tutorial. They are outlined here. We will talk about these after you see the tutorial process in action. Each of these steps is also important, as they deal with debriefing the tutorial session. Let's jump right into an Avid classroom and watch this process in action.
Good morning 7th grade Avid class. Thank you for turning all of your TRFs into me on time. Your Avid tutor, Brian, and I have sorted you into groups while you were organizing your binders. Brian, will you get the class started?
Sure thing, Mrs. Avid. Okay group. Everyone get out your 3-column notes. Jason, you will be the first one to present your point of confusion.
Yay. Thank you, Brian.
Jason, can you please tell us your point of confusion? Thank you.
Should I start with my 30-second speech?
Yes, Jason. Everyone listen now as Jason gives us his 30-second speech.
My point of confusion comes from my social studies class. It has to do with the Alien and Sedition Act of 1978. The original question given to me by my teacher was whether or not the Alien and Sedition Act was a violation of free speech. I also have to explain my answer. Some key words that I need to know are sedition, which means stirring up rebellion against a government, and violation, which is something that you did wrong against a law or rule. What I already know about my question is that the law passed was a violation of freedom of speech. I also know that the Federalist Congress passed the law to silence its critics. Next, I can show you what I have already tried. I drew a cluster diagram with some of the details that I know. All I have to do now is figure out why it was a violation of Americans' rights to free speech. And this is why my point of confusion is how can I determine if the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798 is a violation of freedom of speech? I really need to know why. Do any of you have questions that can help me?
Thank you, Jason. That was a very nice 30-second speech. Does anyone want to start with a question for Jason?
Jason, I have a question. Do you have a definition of freedom of speech? If so, what does that mean?
Good question, Michael. Jason, or group, what do you think?
Doesn't it have something to do with the First Amendment to the Constitution?
Yes, I think you are right. Let me take out some notes on this. Yes, it says here in my notes that the First Amendment to the Constitution says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech.
Good use of your resources, Jason. Does anyone have anything else to ask Jason?
Yes, it is part of the First Amendment. But, what does free speech mean? How would you define it, Jason?
Well, I guess it means you can say what you want, without being punished by the law. Does that sound right?
What does the group think? Is there a resource we could use to verify Jason's definition?
Let us look it up on our phones, Ryan. Just a minute.
Ah. Here. I found it. Freedom of speech is defined as the right to express any opinions without censorship or restraint, so this means that you got it right, Jason. Let's write it on the board. So, it is the right to express an opinion without censorship. Got it.
So, now, let's think about the original question on the TRF. How was the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798 a violation of free speech? Does anyone have any notes on what the law said?
I've got some Cornell notes on this in my binder. And also, didn't you have a cluster map about this, Jason? Yes. You are right. I did have a cluster map. On my cluster map it says that the president had the power to remove people from the country who were disloyal to America. It targeted immigrants specifically. My social studies notes also say that the law made it harder for immigrants to vote, even if they had been in the country for a long time.
Yes, I remember now. They used to be citizens after 5 years. But under the new laws, they had to wait 14 years to be citizens.
Oh, yes. And according to my notes, the Sedition Acts prevented everyone from speaking against the actions of the president, even when they disagreed.
What I heard you say was that the president could arrest people for speaking their opinion and he could make it harder for newer citizens to vote.
So, if the immigrants are considered citizens, does the president or Congress have the right to arrest them for simply expressing their opinion? Remember the First Amendment.
Well, I guess that means that the law would be censoring free speech. So is that why it would be a violation of the freedom of speech?
What does the group think?
I think Jason has answered his POC. Jason, what is now the answer you would give for your POC?
Well, the original POC that I wrote on the board was, how can I determine if the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798 is a violation of freedom of speech? To answer that, I would say that it was a violation of the freedom of speech, because Congress and the President wanted to censor people's opinions, and that was a violation of the First Amendment rights that people had to express their opinion without punishment. So, these laws were violating the Constitution. I am going to mark this with an exclamation point because it is my aha moment. I think I now know what I need to know to answer my question. Thank you all for your help.
I would first like to congratulate this entire group for participating. All of you asked at least one good question and contributed to helping Jason with his question. Does Jason have to do anything else before he sits down?
I know. Brian, we have to have him write out his steps so we know he understands his question.
Jason, can you write out your steps for us?
Yes, Brian. My first step was to define freedom of speech. Then I had to look at my notes and we used our resources to find more information about the Alien and Sedition Acts. Then, I used my cluster map to look for parts of the law that violated freedom of speech. Then, after talking about it with my group members, I realized I had answered my point of confusion. What I concluded is that the law was a violation of free speech because it sought to censor people who were only giving their opinions. This violated the First Amendment to the Constitution, and the Constitution is the ultimate law of the land. Now I understand why the acts were a violation of the law. No law can undo the words of the Constitution.
I have to say, that was a very good tutorial session. Great job problem solving together. I also appreciated how your tutor, Brian, used the Socratic method by only asking questions during the tutorial session. After all of you are done with your turn at the board, remember to write your reflections before class is over. Thank you for working very hard today.
Okay. Who is next?
I'll go.
What you just saw was one complete tutorial session for one student. This same process will continue for each student in the group as time allows. Remember that you just witnessed steps 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the AVID tutorial process. Now, let's see what happens after the tutorial session. In this session, you will see students completing a written reflection of their learning, receiving feedback from their tutor in both verbal and written form. Finally, the tutor and teacher will debrief about how the tutorial day went. This is a good opportunity for the tutor to bring any issues to the teacher's attention. Let's see these steps in action. That was a wonderful tutorial group. I really appreciated how everyone participated. You will all get full participation points today for collaboration. Now, what I would like you to do is to spend some time working on writing your reflection. Please take a few minutes to reflect on your learning from today. Thank you.
Today in the tutorial, my point of confusion was, how do I use the order of operations to simplify polynomials?
What I learned is that the Alien and Sedition Acts violated the Constitution. Since the Constitution is the ultimate law of the land, no law can undo it.
What I learned is that round characters are usually the ones that you learn more about, while flat characters are superficial. This new learning will help me better understand how flat and round characters are portrayed by authors.
Today, in the tutorial, my point of confusion was, how do I graph an equation with 3 variables? What I learned is that the process is pretty much the same, except a third variable adds a third axis. This new learning will help me better understand how to draw graphs on 3-dimensional planes. Overall, I thought that today's session was meaningful because we were all able to help each other by asking good questions. I feel good about my question now.
Okay class. The bell is about to ring. Make sure that you turn your reflections into your tutor. Brian and I will spend some time looking over them and giving you feedback.
Thank you group. Once again, I have to compliment you on your work. I can already tell you put a lot of effort into your reflections. See you next Thursday. Thank you for going first today, Jason. You are a brave risk taker. Good effort on the reflection as well. Brian.
How did it go today, Brian?
I think today went very well. Everyone did well at participating. It is just a shame that we don't have enough time to get deeper into some of their questions.
You bring up a good point. Maybe we can spend some time every once in a while allowing 1 or 2 students to dive deeper into their point of confusion. Remember that you can always have the group come up with another similar question if you feel that more time should be spent on a topic. That is always your choice as a tutor.
Thank you. I appreciate your feedback.
Absolutely. That is why this debrief time is always valuable. Are you ready for the next class?
Absolutely. Remember, every step of the tutorial process is important. Those last 3 steps are especially important. Feedback and reflection will help to improve future tutorials. Well, that concludes our look at an Avid tutorial. I hope you found it to be informative and helpful. Happy